Nevertheless, we spoke about Tadej Pogačar, and I mean, plenty of people has called you an Pogačar fanboy, and yeah, we're going to take this opportunity to say why is Tadej Pogačar going to be winning the 2023 Tour de France? We'll let Patrick go first, and then
Oh, right.
Ewan can, yeah.
All right. I was gonna let you go first and kind of let it rip. I think that Pogacar will win. Actually, to be fair, I do kind of think that he will win. I think that UAE with Adam Yates in there. I think that Jumbo-Visma having Roglic there last year was really good. That really helped Jonas, and I don't think that he has that this year. But I do think that could Yates, he has been looking better this year at UAE in comparison to when he was at Ineos last year. And I am thinking whether UAE could deploy Yates and put pressure on Jonas. I think it's a possibility if they try and keep him up there in GC. You have to remember that I know he was dropped at like quite a fair, like by a fair margin in the Dauphiné by Jonas, but Roglic was like a little fair bit back in GC when we were going up the Galibier, and yet Pogacar still reacted. So I think that Pogacar will win based upon team dynamics. I think that Jumbo-Visma might be a bit regimented, and I think that UAE are pretty willing to throw the kitchen sink at it, and I think that they might just catch Jumbo-Visma off guard. Pogacar will be better at picking up bonus seconds. You know, that doesn't make the race, but it will help to put pressure on Jonas to do something, because if they're ahead in GC, then it's all on Jonas to try and do the attacks rather than be the one defending. So I think it'll be based upon team dynamics and also just Pogacar just being Pogacar and just his aggressive racing style. Yeah, I do think honestly that Pogacar will win this race, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he's going to do it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. That team dynamic, as you said, with Adam Yates, they could probably fit him into a third place or fourth place overall, then sort of play with all the other teams and the other competitors, like your Jai Hindleys, your Ben O'Connors, your Romain Bardet, and see how they react when Yates is right up there in the GC. But similarly, Jumbo could do the same with Wilco Kelderman as well. So maybe it's sort of tit for tat there. Based on form recently, I'm probably more favorable towards Yates than Kelderman, but Kelderman's more consistent as a Grand Tour racer. But is he aggressive enough? We don't quite know. I think Pogacar, if he's up to full force, I think it's going to be a really interesting race in terms of what UAE do here. Jumbo are bringing a very similar team to last year, and yes, they completely dominated last year's race, but I don't quite think they can replicate and copy paste that this year. How willing are they to sort of test out new tactics, try out new things this year? Last year's Tour de France was really renversé, like turned on its head at the Col du Granon stage. Where this year, if you don't have that kind of Col du Granon dynamic on one of the days, then what does the rest of the race become? That could certainly become a very interesting part of the Tour de France. Maybe it's going to be a sort of stalemate for a while in that first week of racing where they're looking at each other so sternly and everyone's too scared to make that first move. But they seem so equally matched at certain points as well over the past 2 years, and they've sort of been riding together in the mountains. It's just going to take one of these big sort of game-changing days to really put one of them in the yellow jersey. But I think Pogacar, with his sort of polyvalent style, his aggressive willingness to race, his relentless willingness to race, I think he could definitely crack Jonas. I think in that final week of racing in particular, given that Jonas is looking really hot on form this year, is he peaking too early, like Pogacar last year? Has he gone too quick out the blocks? Whereas Pogacar is recovered from injury, and he's probably going to age into this race, and his team around him are going to support that, especially once we get into the high mountains in the Alps in that final week of racing, where we see the likes of Felix Gauchard, Rafael Majka, Marc Soler, and Adam Yates really come into their own, whilst your Tish Benoit and so forth are struggling to stay onto that group of favourites. UAE probably do have the upper hand in the team. Pogacar as well. I think he'll probably win that time trial in the final week of racing. UAE have been looking far better in time trialing this year than Jumbo-Visma. I know, hot take, but just look at the recent Dauphiné results. Miguel Biel beat Jonas Vingegaard, even looking at sort of the results of the top 10.
I have a sneaking suspicion Vingegaard let Miguel Biel take that victory. Kind of, yeah.
Vingegaard looked disappointed off the finishing line.
I don't know. I just, they're so good friends, the Danish pros, that Miguel Biel hasn't had a single victory, but only Jonas Vingegaard will know this.
That's true, but Grosjean also finished in sixth place, which does show a general.
I think it's a valid point.
And UAE have been missing the mark this year. Wow, Van Aert in Tour de Suisse missed the mark.
Jumbo.
And Jumbo Visma have been missing the mark this year in the time trials. Wow, Van Aert missed out in Tour de Suisse. Christophe Laporte looked poor at the Dauphiné when he's a pretty good time trialist. Wilco Kelderman missed the mark in the time trials at Tour de Suisse. Even at Dauphiné earlier this year, I mean, in that team time trial, they're like the team time trial world champions. Yeah, they won that strange TTT, but EF were just like breathing down their neck, which is a surprising sort of turn of events, really. So I just feel like UAE's got this underdog momentum this year. I think we might be underplaying UAE's value, and we're just sort of thinking of Jumbo Visma as demigods, whereas UAE have a super strong team. And think about where they were in 2021. They controlled that race really well. Last year, they had half a team towards the end. This year, they have a much better team than they've ever sent to the Tour de France since they rebranded, and specifically with Pogačar. So I'm very excited to see how this one's going to go. And I think Pogačar might just have the upper hand.
That first week last year was just tailor-made for Tadej Pogačar. Like, it was incredible. And I think this first week isn't. It's a lot more neutral. Like you both were saying, that they are very similar. There's no cobble stage. There's no long wee finish, that kind of thing. He really showed himself really well, I think.
You say no long we finish, but the opening stage in Bilbao could probably suit Pogačar there. You could probably get a top 3 on that kind of stage. Then looking towards stage 2, there's a bonus second sprint at the top of the final climb of the day. Pogačar could gain time there. Going into La Reims on stage 5, I believe it is. Pogačar won there in 2020. If it comes down to the group of favorites in a sprint, Pogačar is probably going to win that. Courtrai probably will be a neutralized GC battle. And then going into Puy-de-Dôme, it's a very steep finale. Pogačar was good in the Massif Central back in 2020, that year's Tour de France, when he and Roglic really dominated the race at Puy-Marie-Cantal. I'd say it does suit Pogačar. Not quite as tailor-made as last year, but it definitely suits him.
I also think that, like you're saying, Ewan, I think UAE is generally just a bit stronger. I would, on balance, I'm just looking at their team, I would on balance take Grosjean, Micah, Soler, and Yates over Kusk, Kelderman, Benoit. Like, when you just say those names, like, I know you could throw Wout van Aert in there as well, depending on, like, you know, if he's even in the race, if his kid's being born or whatever. I just think on balance, UAE just have a stronger mountain train. I think they have the ability to dictate the race a bit more, to be honest with you. I think that Jumbo Visma really took the scruff of the neck of the race last year, especially in that stage 11. But I'm just not convinced they can do the same this year. I think that UAE are the main protagonists.
We've always said this. I think it was absolutely criminal that Adam Yates joined UAE Team Emirates. Such a strong rider, top 10 before, winner of the white jersey. And I think you're both right that, yeah, they're definitely going to be taking 2 Jumbo Visma this year. But yeah, even the fact that they're leaving out a strong rider as Brendan McNulty just shows the depth of this UAE team, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't even clock that they weren't bringing McNulty. But yeah, he is because he was very good last year. You know, I think we all remember, what was it? Was it Pedergood or something where he was leading Pogačar and Jonas. I mean, eventually on that day, all that really happened was that Pogačar only really gained 4 bonus seconds essentially on Jonas. So, but still, the fact remains that Brandon McNulty was really good in that stage, better than any other Jumbo Visma domestique, because none of the rest of them were there. So yeah, I think you're right. Spot UAE are just mopping up all sorts of talent right now, and leaving out McNulty is just almost a flex to the rest of the peloton.